Comey calls Trump morally unfit and a stain on all around him. Mexico climbs from 13th to 6th most popular international tourism destination. Despite making more money than ever, airlines face a multitude of challenges. And a new report reveals Mexico leads the world in work-related stress. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News Business. I'm Elliot Bullman. Let's go to the information. ABC News aired a hard-hitting interview with Mr. Comey on Sunday night, the president's fired FBI director, as he uses a publicity blitz for his searing tell-all memoir, A Higher Loyalty, to raise the alarm about the dangers he says Mr. Trump poses to the country. Mr. Comey called Mr. Trump a serial liar who treated women like meat and described him as a stain on everyone who works for him. He said a salacious allegation that Mr. Trump had cavorted with prostitutes in Moscow had left him vulnerable to blackmail by the Russian government. And he asserted that the president was incinerating the country's crucial norms and traditions like a wildfire. He compared the president to a mafia boss. The interview with Mr. Comey amounted to a remarkable public assault on a sitting president by someone who served at the highest levels in the government. The stakes for both men could hardly be higher. Mr. Comey seems likely to be the star witness in any obstruction of justice case that might be brought against the president by Robert S. Mueller III, the special counsel in the sprawling Russia investigation. While many of Mr. Trump's critics believe that the proper remedy for his perceived transgressions is impeachment, Mr. Comey insisted that would just let the American people off the hook. He said the public was duty-bound to vote Mr. Trump out of office in the next election. And of course, as if on cue, hours before the interview took place, Mr. Trump called Mr. Comey a slimeball for the second time in 3 days, saying in a pair of early morning Twitter posts that he belonged in jail for what the president said were lies to Congress and leaks of classified information. It's unclear where this epic battle of wills will lead, other than a sustained escalation of insults between two men who have each admitted to having outsized egos. But it is certain to be a test of powerful forces in the modern media landscape. The presidential megaphone, amplified by 50 million Twitter followers, and the global reach of an adversary who is on a seemingly endless 24-hour cable news-driven book tour. In other news, with the opening of Mexico's 43rd Tourism Tianguis event in Mazatlan, it's being widely acknowledged that Mexico has climbed from 13th to 6th position in the world ranking of international tourism destinations. Mexico's success as a global leader in tourism will leave an enormous responsibility for whoever succeeds the head of the Ministry of Tourism, Enrique de la Madrid. Outgoing President Enrique Peña Nieto received a generous farewell applause during the inauguration of the Tianguis in Mazatlan for shaping Mexico as the 6th world power in international tourism. This year's Tourism Tianguis de Mazatlan has a historical presence of 55 countries and more than 700 international companies exhibiting. The concentration of foreign tourism demand in Mexico is very high. 80% of international revenues are concentrated in just 5 destinations: Riviera Maya, Cancun, Puerto Vallarta, Riviera Nayarit, Cabo San Lucas, and Ciudad de Mexico. Mexico's task now will be to jealously guard what has already been achieved and move the country forward as a varied, safe, and competitive destination. In 2012, Spain received 57.5 million tourists, and for 2017, it consolidated itself as the 2nd world power, receiving 81.4 million visitors. In 2017, Spain accounted for 60 billion euros in revenues from international tourism. But with all due respect, Mexico has much more potential than Spain if it works to make it a reality. Moving on. The state of the airline industry is strong. Around the world, the number of people flying increased by 6.6% in 2017. In fact, the world's 20th busiest airports alone saw roughly 1.5 billion passengers pass through its terminals last year, trade group Airports Council International reported. However, the airline business is not without its problems. Any cursory look at airlines will turn up any number of stories about dissatisfied customers or some facet of the industry under threat. The increase in the number of flyers, along with the airline's strategic shift towards increasing the frequency of flights, means more planes and more passengers. This results in crowded airport terminals and an increase in the number of delays. And the specter of terrorism still looms large over the airline industry. Incidents like the shoe bombers and the tragic events of 9/11 serve as a reminder that terrorism remains an ever-present threat. Over the past 15 years, security screening procedures have become increasingly stringent. This has resulted in longer checkpoint waiting times and complaints from the traveling public. Then technology has been great for airlines. Biometrics is going to be a changer for airport experiences. However, as the airline industry and the infrastructure that serves it becomes increasingly dependent on technology, it's also going to be even more vulnerable. With the growing threat of cybercrime, the airline industry will have to work much harder to stay ahead of the curve. Fuel is an airline's greatest cost. The industry's newfound profitability has certainly been helped by a sharp decline in oil prices in 2014. However, crude prices are rebounding. Even though it may not reach its previous heights, airlines will have to learn how to survive in a higher cost environment. And then there's climate change. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey devastated Texas. Stuck in the middle of the storm was United Airlines' mega hub in Houston and roughly 10,000 of its employees. The number of extreme weather events are no longer the exception, but the norm. The vulnerability of airlines to this multitude of factors has to do with the global nature of the business. The very things that make airlines so interesting and alluring are also the same things that threaten its well-being. In other headlines, Mexico occupies one of the first places in the world of people with work-related stress, as revealed by a study carried out by the online job board Boomerang.com. The study stated that people who are of working age in Mexico have the same levels of stress as first world countries such as China and the United States. This is due to the lack of preparation by companies to provide healthy spaces to work. The most recurrent problems are usually reduced spaces for work, lack of benefits, poor organization, pressure, and lack of or no recognition. An important fact to point out is that stress can lead to chronic diseases such as depression, diabetes, anxiety, obesity, gastritis, and constipation. The National Survey of Psychiatric Epidemiology affirmed that in Mexico, anxiety affects 14.3% of the population, while depression affects 9.2%. On the other hand, the prolonged use of shoes causes pain in the lower back in women, although this can also occur if when sitting, bad posture is maintained for a sustained period. And finally, that was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.